Hi, everyone. So good to see you here at the Nourished Festival. So I had a little bit of technical issues and I broke out a little bit while I gave my presentation. So I have recorded my presentation again immediately following the presentation I just gave live. So if it broke out for you at any part, just watch this. This will be a complete version. And I also just want to let you know, I do have a copy of all the questions that you asked. And so stick around to the end. I'm going to go ahead and answer all of those questions. All right, so thank you so much for being here today. Thank you to the Nourished Festival for putting this event on and bringing our community together. Since we can't be together in person because of you know what, at least we can be together virtually and connect. All right, so what I'm going to do is share my screen, and I think since I'm now recording this in a different platform, you're still going to be able to see me, and then you'll also see my screen and my presentation. So let me go ahead and do that. Just give me 1 second to figure out how to share my screen. All right, here we go. I'm going to share my presentation screen. Oops, gotta get into present mode here. Okay, great. You should be able to see my screen, and I think you also can see me in the corner as well. Today, we are going to talk about the perils of gluten cross-contamination, what it is, and how to protect yourself. Ooh, good stuff, right? All right, so just a little bit about me. My name is Jenny Levine Finke. I'm a certified integrative nutrition coach. I also blog. I created the blog called Good For You Gluten-Free, goodforyouglutenfree.com. A lot of you follow me on Instagram or you're part of my newsletter or website community. So thank you so much. And I welcome new people to join us as well. I've been living with celiac disease for almost 9 years. And I also wrote a book called Dear Gluten, It's Not Me, It's You. It's my baby. I love this book. It's everything that I have learned about healing my body and breaking up with gluten. So, and I'll give you a little hint. You can actually win a copy of my book. I'm going to put a URL at the end of this presentation on where you can go to enter to win a copy of my book, okay? All right, so today we're going to talk about what is gluten cross-contamination, sources of cross-contamination in the home, at restaurants, and in packaged foods. Then we're going to talk about how to protect yourself from cross-contamination. And I'm going to share a few freebies as we go along. And so make sure you have a pen and paper to write down some URLs where you can grab these freebies. And of course, I have a giveaway at the end, which I kind of already told you about, right? And then I am going to do some Q&A at the end. I have a list of all the questions that you asked live, and I'm going to go through those as well. So what is gluten cross-contamination exactly? So gluten cross-contamination is when a food that is gluten-free actually comes in contact with a food that contains gluten. So your salad might be gluten-free. They put croutons by mistake on top of your salad. Those croutons are not gluten-free, and all of a sudden your salad is no longer gluten-free, okay? And so this happens all the time, that something that is gluten-free is somehow coming in contact with gluten, and now you're getting sick, right? And you're eating gluten unknowingly, and that's not very fun when that happens. So let's talk, before we get into where cross-contamination lurks, let's just talk about how much gluten can even make you sick. Does cross-contamination even matter? That's a great question. So something that you should be aware of is that the typical gluten-free person actually consumes between 6 to 10 milligrams of gluten per day. And the reason is that the FDA says, hey, products that contain up to 20 parts per million of gluten can still be labeled gluten-free. So maybe you're consuming a product that has a little bit of gluten in it. Maybe you're eating a meal out at a restaurant or a friend's house, and it's got a little gluten in it from cross-contact. You don't know, but you are consuming a little gluten every day. But where some of the scariness can come in for us and for our community is that studies have shown intestinal damage can start for some people as low as 0.4 milligrams of gluten per day. So you can be experiencing some sort of intestinal damage for a very tiny amount of gluten. And Symptoms can even begin as low as 0.015 milligrams of gluten per day, a negligible amount. You can still be experiencing symptoms related with eating gluten. And so what does 10 milligrams even look like? I had no idea, like honestly, no idea. And so I found this picture from the Gluten-Free Watchdog online. The Gluten-Free Watchdog is a great resource for our community as well. And you can see that, if you can see this little crumb here next to the quarter, that's what 10 milligrams of gluten looks like. And that's what most of us are probably consuming on an average day. So you're seeing just a little gluten can cause big harm in some cases. So let's talk about where cross-contamination lurks and how to protect yourself, okay? Right, so a big source of cross-contamination is in your home. And please forgive me if some of this stuff is obvious. I think we can all learn and grow from this information, and you might get some aha moments, especially if you're still feeling sick. You might be like, whoa, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize maybe this is where I was getting cross-contamination, okay? And so some of this might be obvious and some of this might be new. Thank you for being here wherever you are on your gluten-free journey. I just wanted to make sure I was inclusive as possible in all these different places for cross-contamination. And so the first source is in the home. And here we have dish towels. And if you look at, maybe you prepare a sandwich and then you just kind of wipe your hands off, or you wipe the counter off with the crumbs with your dish towel. That dish towel's probably got lots of gluten bits in it if you're using if you're cooking gluten and gluten-free foods in your home. So dish towel is a real big source of cross-contamination. You want to wash those things often. And we'll talk about a little bit how to protect yourself with the dish towel in a bit. Sponges, my husband always say, our kids are like sponges, they pick up everything. Well, sponges pick up everything, even bits of gluten and all sorts of contaminants. So those sponges can be a big source of potential gluten cross-contamination in your home. A lot of you have heard of the toaster oven. That's pretty obvious because we're toasting bread and there's always lingering crumbs and bits of gluten in that toaster oven. So you don't want to use the same toaster oven. It can be controversial. Some people say it's okay, but if you are still feeling sick and you have a serious reaction to gluten, I'd say don't use that toaster oven if you're using it to toast wheat bread. And then here, I have these two pictures here of baking in the kitchen. And this is stuff I learned many years into gluten-free living. And the KitchenAid, that standing mixer, or even that handheld mixer, it has so many gluten bits on it if you're using it to bake gluten-based baked goods, just regular wheat cookies or whatever. So flour not only can stay airborne, so flour is airborne getting into everything, it can stay airborne for up to 12 to 24 hours. And when you're mixing that flour and it's going airborne, it's potentially settling in on other products in your house or on the countertop, and it's certainly sticking into bits inside that KitchenAid mixer. So you don't necessarily have to go run out to the store and get a new KitchenAid right now. Just wash that KitchenAid, run it for a few minutes, and then say, the only thing I'm going to use in this mixer is gluten-free stuff from here on out. Or if you are going to bake both wheat-based goods and gluten-free goods, you're going to definitely want a separate mixer, or one of those things you're going to want to be mixing by hand and not using the mixer, okay? And the same in baking world is, think about when you're baking a cake, and let's say the recipe says you need 1 cup of flour. So you take a cup, measuring cup, take a scoop of flour, put it in your bowl. And then the recipe says 1 cup of sugar. You take that same measuring cup and then you stick it in the sugar and take a scoop of sugar. Well, guess what you just put in the sugar? You just put bits of flour and gluten in the sugar. So if someone is baking for you, they need to use a clean package of sugar to bake for you, a clean bag of sugar. Because I bet you anything that sugar has contaminants of wheat flour in it. And the same would be for something like baking powder or baking soda or other things that people might be using the same measuring cups for. So baking can be full of perils in the home. A lot of you probably know that mesh colander that you use to strain spaghetti can be full of gluten bits. I don't care how much you try to clean that. There is always gluten in there. Just look at it. There's bits of gluten in that colander. And then the other spot is things like condiments, like a tub of butter, mayonnaise, peanut butter, jelly jars, something where someone might be sticking their knife in the jar, spreading it on a piece of wheat bread, and then putting it back in the jar to grab some more. And I mean, when I was growing up, we shared a tub of butter and there were always crumbs. I just have visions of crumbs in our tub of butter because, you know, usually you don't have to worry about that stuff when you don't worry about gluten, you know, when you eat gluten. But when you're gluten-free and you see a crumb in that butter, you better run. And then also on the counter. So that's always frustrating when you see crumbs on the counters, especially if kids or messy spouses or whatever. And you never know if that's gluten crumbs or gluten-free crumbs. And there was a time in my life where I shared my home with the gluten eaters in my home. I'm the only one in my home that is celiac and strict gluten-free, although my husband is gluten-free now, but he doesn't get sick if he eats gluten like I get sick. And he said, you know, it's really frustrating. I can see how frustrated you are that there's not even a safe place in this whole world that you can go and know you're not going to get glutened. And so he actually made the decision for our family. He said, this house has to be gluten-free. You have to have one place in this world where you feel safe eating and that everything is safe for you to eat. And so that's where where we decided to move our house to be 100% gluten-free. And I know a lot of you live with roommates or family members, and that's not always possible for everyone, but it was really the best decision for our family. But it took us 4 or 5 years before we actually made that decision. It wasn't something we made overnight. All right, so protecting yourself in the home. You want to have, if you can, a dedicated gluten-free kitchen, or like I said, a good compromise is, let's say, we're only going to bake gluten-free in our home. And if we want to eat non-gluten-free baked goods, we're going to buy them. We're going to buy regular bagels and bread and brownies. But if we're going to bake, we're going to only bake gluten-free. So this way, you know, all your baking supplies and your measuring cups and everything are gluten-free. You also can get a dedicated space in your pantry or fridge. So here, you know, just pick a top spot so it's out of reach, nothing can spill in it. That is your gluten-free stuff. And nobody's going to touch your potato chips and your popcorn, whatever you want to store in your cabinet, because that is gluten-free and off limits to everyone else. And in the fridge and things like that, you're going to want to label things like those condiments that we talked about. You're going to want to have your own separate mayo jar, and you're going to want to label it gluten-free. About those towels and sponges and even those appliances like the strainer and toaster and some of those things, one thing you can do is have specific color-coded things that are just for gluten-free people, and the rest can be used by other people. So before my house went dedicated gluten-free, we used to have red towels and pink sponges. I had a red strainer. We had anything that was pink and red was mine and was designated gluten-free. And then if it was another color, anyone could use it. It was for everyone else. We even have a red toaster oven in our house. So I know that is the gluten-free toaster. Okay, so you can color code and have fun with it and just keep your stuff sort of out of reach. Keep your towel out of reach from everyone else. You can have designated baking equipment and ingredients. And like I said, you want to have a sugar that's just dedicated to gluten-free baking. You can't use that sugar for both. Really communicate your needs to your roommates and your family. Ask for consideration. Ask them to wash hands before touching fridge handles and knobs as much as possible. Although a lot of this is on you. If you're going to touch the fridge handle, you can't put the onus on everyone else at times. So make sure you just wash your hands after you touch it and before you prepare food or eat food. And really work at cleaning surfaces well after handling gluten. And everyone should have really good kitchen hygiene and help you wash dishes and pots, and everything should be washed really well. And the dishwasher is a great place. It's going to really help keep everything clean. But soap and hot water, you really want to have good washing, hand washing, pot washing, really good kitchen hygiene. Okay. So now let's talk about the place where most of us shudder, and that is cross-contamination in restaurants. And there was actually the study that said a third of all restaurant meals that were marked gluten-free actually contained gluten. This is a real study, guys. So restaurant is the riskiest place for hidden gluten and cross-contamination of gluten. So I'm going to go through some of those potential pitfalls inside restaurant right now. Let me just grab a quick drink. It's so dry in Denver, so need to hydrate. The first source is the deep fryer. And I'll tell you, French fries, that's my favorite food. I love French fries. I might even eat French fries over chocolate. That's how much I love French fries. But we cannot eat French fries that have been cooked in the same fryer as things that aren't gluten-free. So French fries, potatoes, naturally gluten-free, right? But if they're dipped in the same oil that's used to make chicken nuggets and fried mozzarella sticks and things that are breaded, those French fries are going to have bits of gluten coating them, and they are not going to be safe for you to eat. So you want to make sure it's a dedicated gluten-free fryer or a separate fryer for something like French fries. So something like Chick-fil-A and Red Robin, they have a separate fryer, at least the ones I go to, check with yours, but the ones I go to have a separate fryer just for their fries. So Chick-fil-A is just cooking their fries in their fry fryer, and then they're cooking their chicken nuggets in another fryer, right? So this way I can eat those fries, yay. And that's good for me, good on me. But you have to ask and really seek that knowledge out every time you eat out. Same with pans. Pans may not be cleaned between preparing meals that contain gluten and that are gluten-free. So you do want to ask them to use clean pans, clean spatulas. Pasta water. Oh my gosh, I've heard so much about pasta water. I've even experienced some issues with pasta water, but some restaurants are using the same pasta water to cook their gluten-free pasta and their wheat pasta. And then you just know, if you're just dipping that basket of pasta in the same water, you know there's gluten all over everything, okay? So you just need to ask, are you cooking it in a clean pot with clean utensils? Like, how is your pasta being handled? Or just don't order pasta, honestly. Toaster oven. Oh my gosh, I used to go to brunch with my friend all the time in this restaurant. We'd say, oh, well, no, don't worry. We have gluten-free bread. And I was like, okay, great. So I'd order my omelet or eggs and I'd get gluten-free bread, and it was toasted and delicious. And it just, after doing that for a few months, I just sort of realized, wait a second, how are they toasting this bread? And when I asked, of course, they're toasting it in their toaster. Duh. They're toasting it in the same toaster they're cooking their other bread in. There's no way a restaurant has a gluten-free dedicated toaster that is clean from all gluten. And so if you are going to get bread with your omelet, maybe don't get it toasted, or just get a bowl of fruit. That's what I do. And I was like, I don't want the toast. Can you bring me some fruit? Yes. Perfect. Way healthier and safer. All right. I guarantee you, if you order a gluten-free waffle, they are just putting gluten-free batter in the same waffle iron. And this is what most waffle irons look like. So you are getting so much cross-contamination. And I highly doubt the restaurant has a dedicated gluten-free waffle iron. You can ask, but I doubt it. So don't order the waffle. Pizza, huge source of contamination with surfaces and airborne flour, and people, grabbing cheese and pepperoni to prepare regular flour and wheat flour. So you really need to know that they have separate prep areas and separate utensils. But pizza is a very risky thing to eat out. And I just prefer to make my own or get some frozen pizza and eat it at home. If I really want pizza, I reserve pizza at home and I order something more like baked salmon when I go out to eat with my friends. So I'm going out to eat to be with my friends, not necessarily be able to enjoy pizza. It's just not safe. Think about the griddle. A bunless burger is usually a very safe order, but some restaurants are toasting their buns on the same surface, and you bet there's tons of crumbs that are there and getting into your burger. And then oftentimes they're using the same surface to prepare deli sandwiches and cut things, and all that can happen. So you definitely want to ask for a clean surface, clean gloves, clean everything. And then I think that salad bars and buffets are just like cross-contamination nightmares, because things are dripping into everything else, and people are using the utensils to grab one thing, and then they're using that same utensil to grab something else. And it really is a cross-contamination nightmare. Now, right now with COVID, a lot of salad bars and buffets are just not accessible. And I don't know if they're going to come back. They might. But I think buffets in the future are unavoidable, and cruise ships and in Las Vegas and places like that where you might be visiting and they're known for their buffets, you can do a couple of things to protect yourself. If you can't avoid a buffet. That's number one. Two is ask if they can get you a clean, like make you a plate of certain things from untouched stuff in the back. So they might be able to make you a plate with things that just haven't been cross-contaminated and are gluten-free. And they did that for me at the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas, and it was wonderful. And I was able to eat the buffet with my friends and feel safe. And if you have to, eat at a buffet and it's like really your only option, is take from the back, take from the parts that haven't been all contaminated and icky. If you're eating at a buffet with your family, like for Thanksgiving, we put all the food out, and of course there's rolls, and then there's turkey and mashed potatoes and things like that. I always ask if I can take first, and my family's been trained and they're okay with it, but I just go ahead and make myself a plate from all the food that hasn't been cross-contaminated and touched, and I set it aside. Then we call everyone in for dinner, and then they make a big mess, and then I have my plate of food, and I know it hasn't actually accidentally had gravy drippings in it or anything that would contaminate my food. And so my family's used to me taking first when the food is out in buffet style. So other ways to protect yourself, I already went through the buffet, but the other thing in restaurants is you want to ask lots of questions. Is it a dedicated fryer? How are you preparing my pizza? And you want to get satisfactory answers, or don't order there if you don't get satisfactory answers. You want to over communicate your needs. I think a lot of us are nervous to sound like we are high maintenance or anything like that, but there is a way to order and say, hey, I'm really serious about being gluten-free. I have an allergy. I know you don't technically have an allergy. Celiac and gluten intolerance is not an allergy, but that is a word that restaurants understand. That's speaking the restaurant's language. So use the word allergy, gluten allergy. They understand that. And you can also say, hey, I either have celiac disease or I have symptoms just like someone with celiac. So I'm very serious and careful about gluten. Not, my food can't come in contact with gluten at all. Can you help me order something safe? Okay. And so really over communicating, being kind about it, and having that conversation, it's always a good way to protect yourself as much as possible. I also suggest ordering the safest foods on the menu. I know pizza, pasta, waffles, all of that it's so good. Trust me, I love that stuff too. But if I'm going to go out to eat, I do try to order more safely, like that baked salmon or something like a baked potato versus French fries is going to be a little safer. And so I do try to have a little restraint when I'm ordering out, and it's not a dedicated gluten-free restaurant. And then I eat French fries at home if I have to, right? Anytime I'll eat French fries. All right, so one thing you can do is download my gluten-free safe dining card. It's something I had my graphic designer design. It's card.goodforyouglutenfree.com. Please write that down. And it's just a little dining card that says what you can and can't eat, and it communicates your needs to your server. And I don't use it all the time, but it actually came in handy when my friend in St. Louis took me to her favorite Mexican restaurant a few years ago. And the restaurant was so good, but the problem was they didn't have anything gluten-free labeled on the menu. And so I had to have a conversation with my server, and there was a little bit of a language barrier. And so I handed him my card, and he was able to really understand my needs. And he took my card and showed it to the person preparing my food in the back. And then he came back out and he said, we understand, we're going to make you something good. And so it was helpful. That extra level of communication in some cases can be really helpful. All right, cross-contamination at the grocery store. Time to play gluten roulette. All right, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because when I was presenting at the Nourished Festival last time in September, I talked all about food labeling and gluten in products. And I think you can still access that session. And if you can't access that session, go ahead and email me and I'm happy to send it to you. I'll provide my email at the end of this presentation. But we know there are sources of cross-contamination along the whole manufacturing process. And something like oats are grown in the same fields in rotation with wheat, so they are cross-contaminated, even though oats are naturally gluten-free. We see products that are manufactured in the same facility or the same manufacturing equipment as things with wheat. And so you are seeing some potential ways that products can be cross-contaminated during the production process. And that's just a way that you might be getting a little bit of that gluten cross-contamination in those products. So how to protect yourself at the grocery store. And again, know those labels, read them carefully. Things that are labeled gluten-free and even certified gluten-free, which is an extra level, that's a third-party verification that the product is gluten-free. Those are going to be your best bet. And I talked all about this in my last presentation. You also want to just avoid those confusing labels. If it's saying manufactured in a facility that may contain wheat and you're still having a reaction and not feeling well, those kind of labels might be a signal to you that maybe you're getting cross-contamination and you should avoid it. Not always. Sometimes I will eat products that are manufactured in the same facility, but I will never eat a product that is manufactured on the same equipment. Okay. Know thy ingredients. Gluten goes by a lot of names. So obviously you want to know what those names are. It's not just wheat and barley, but it's things like yeast extract and stuff like that. And so I have another cool download. So write this down, cheatsheet.goodforyouglutenfree.com. And this is a list of over 100 alternative names that gluten goes by. Okay, so if you're having trouble identifying these strange names for gluten, this is a good resource for you, okay? Everybody knows. Okay, and then also you want to avoid questionable ingredients. If it's something you don't understand, put it back on the shelf. The other way to really avoid gluten cross-contamination is to eat as naturally gluten-free as possible. So an avocado and an apple, there's very little possibility that foods like that can come in contact with gluten. Obviously, if the avocado is cut on a cutting board that's cut gluten, then that avocado can become cross-contaminated with crumbs of gluten. But if you're just eating an apple or something like that, you're very unlikely going to get cross-contamination. So people have asked me about medications, and I do think that gluten in medications is very rare, and the FDA has confirmed that it's very rare. But there was this independent study done that found 18% of drug manufacturers say their medications contained gluten, which could come from either an ingredient, it could come from cross-contact, it could come from their raw materials. So there is opportunities for potential gluten exposure in medications. And the way to protect yourself, there's a few things you can try, and that is to inspect the label for voluntary allergen claims. Now, medication and the whole drug industry, it's a voluntary allergen claim, whereas products, it's a mandatory allergen labeling, okay? So right now it's voluntary. We are seeing that there is a lot of commotion about labeling drugs and inactive ingredients and allergens. And so I think in the next few years, we're actually going to see some mandatory allergen labeling. Might lead to more confusion, like some more of those precautionary claims like manufactured in a facility that may contain wheat. We might see some of those confusing claims now in medication, but it's a step in the right direction. And I did learn that the largest generic manufacturer of drugs, like the CVS brand, like those generic private label drugs, they actually do labeling. They label all of their products for these allergens, including gluten. And so let's say you pick up the Johnson & Johnson version of something and you can't tell if it has gluten, and you pick up the CVS or the, whatever, I don't know, Walgreens version of it, it might actually say it's gluten-free on that label. It's kind of cool. So the generics are coming a long way, but some of these bigger brands are not. But you do want to look at the inactive ingredients on a drug label. That's where you might see a gluten-containing ingredient. And in the future, hopefully some of those may contain gluten or may contain wheat, things like that. You're not going to really see it in the active ingredients. You want to ask your doctor and pharmacist to research these products for you. Like, keep bugging them, keep asking, because that's how we're going to see change. Contact the manufacturer. You might get stupid emails back like, we don't know, which is likely the kind of email you'll get back from these multi-billion-dollar drug manufacturers, but keep asking, because they're keeping track of people asking. And if enough people ask, enough action will hopefully be taken in the future. They also have FAQs. A lot of times the gluten question is answered in the FAQs on a drug manufacturer's website. All right, just to move on here so we don't run out of time. There is a little bit of potential for cross-contamination in toiletries and cosmetics. I don't worry about these as much in terms of cross-contamination. I worry about these kind of products in terms of just getting glutened. And so here, Bath and Body Works hand sanitizer contains gluten. Lip Smackers lip balm contains gluten, and pretty much all Aveeno products, which Aveeno is oats, contains gluten. And so there could be some cross-contamination during the manufacturing process, but really just avoid gluten in these products. And use gluten-free labeled cosmetics as much as possible. There's actually some really great gluten-free cosmetics and lotion brands out there. And so it was painful at first. I get it. No, I had been using the same makeup forever. And then I had celiac disease and I'm like, what? I have to change makeup, but I've changed makeup and I'm no worse for the wear, right? I found makeup that I like. I experimented with different brands and I'm wearing gluten-free makeup. One thing you should know though, is that gluten cannot be absorbed by your skin. You can actually touch gluten if you have celiac disease and not have a reaction. The only way you have the reaction is if you actually ingest gluten. So things that come in contact with your mouth, lips, eyes, hands, because hands transfer food to our mouths, that's where you can be most susceptible to gluten, right? And obviously you can contact manufacturers to find out if there's gluten in your products. Okay, now just to wrap things up here. So I offered these 2 freebies to you guys, and I hope you'll take advantage and go download them from my website. So the first one is cheatsheet.goodforyouglutenfree.com. That's that list of 100+ sources of hidden gluten, help you sniff out gluten in products and things like that, protect you in products. Sorry. And then lost my train of thought for a second there. All right, so the next one is called my gluten-free safe dining card. And so just go to card.goodforyouglutenfree.com. And that's my safe dining card that you can print. And it's actually, when you fold it in half, it's wallet size. I put a little tape over it. That's what it looks like right here. And I keep it in my wallet. And again, it's just an extra thing I have to communicate my needs to servers at restaurants. I don't have to use it often, but I like knowing I have it. And then I mentioned to you in the beginning that I'm giving away 2 copies of my book. And you can see this is what my book looks like. Dear Gluten, It's Not Me, It's You. How to Survive Without Gluten and Restore Your Health from Celiac Disease or Gluten Sensitivity. And I have a foreword here by the best-selling author, Dr. Tom O'Brien. He's a fantastic author, doctor as well. I hope you check him out. But I'm giving away 2 copies. And so write this down, or if you're at your computer, go to this link. This is my website, goodforyouglutenfree.com/dear-gluten-book. And I'm going to keep this giveaway open till the end of March, because I think a lot of you might be watching this in the recorded version if you're not here live with me today. And I'm going to pick a winner or 2 winners on April 1st, and I'm going to sign the books and I'm going to mail it to you so you can enjoy my new book, which I'm so grateful that so many of you have already read, and I have so many great reviews on Amazon. So thank you so much, and keep that good vibes going. I really appreciate your love and support. And then please connect with me. So I've mentioned my website way too many times. So goodforyouglutenfree.com. Come find me. I've got tons of recipes. I've got product information, restaurant reviews and tests. I test restaurants for hidden gluten. So you'll find all sorts. There's really something for everyone on my website. I'm on Instagram, and that's my handle's Good For You Gluten Free. And we are a very fun and engaged community. And again, I'm always posting things I find or recipes and stuff like that, products. So come on over there. Also share events like today's event and things like that. And then if you have any questions that I didn't get to, or you want a copy or a link, if you want a link to my presentation about gluten-free labeling that I did at the Nourished Festival last year in September, just go ahead and shoot me an email and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can, Jenny@goodforyouglutenfree.com, and I'd be happy to, just connect with you for anything I didn't cover here, okay? And now let me stop sharing my screen. And I should be here. Okay, back on the screen. And what I want to do is pull up your questions that I got. I have a list of the questions here. Just have to pull them up. Please bear with me for a second. Let me just, so I know the questions didn't come through when I first did the presentation. And so a lot of you asked questions, and what happened is my presentation was recorded, but the questions didn't get recorded properly. So I'm just going to go through a few of the questions that were asked and give you guys some answers here and have an additional discussion. So one of the questions was, how do you tactfully ask a host about how they prepare the food when you're visiting someone's house? And so this is a great question because it's a hard thing to do. I totally get it. It's hard to be like, how did you prepare this? And they, that host spent a long time preparing that food for you. So the best thing is really to prepare ahead of time. You're going to eat at their house. You need to pick up the phone and have a conversation with them like an adult and say to them, I can't eat gluten. I'm really serious about it. And I just wanted to know what you were making, if we could talk a little bit about it, and to find out how I can help and what dishes I can bring to help make this easier for you. And so this way you have that conversation up front and they kind of know what you are and aren't willing to eat. And this way you avoid that, that brownie story I told you where, they wanted to prepare the brownies for me, but they added some flour in because of the high altitude. And so just really having those conversations, but you don't want to be drilling them necessarily. And you don't want to be drilling them when you go to their house because they've spent a lot of time preparing that food for you. So it's really best to have that conversation up front as much as possible. Okay. And how do I speak to waiters? That's another question. And so really, I try to be as kind and sweet as possible because I know that I am putting them out a little bit. And at the same time, I still want to eat out and feel normal and be with my family and celebrate my dad's birthday. And we're going out to eat. I want to be able to do all those things. Even though I eat most of my meals at home, I want to be able to eat out. So when I speak to waiters, I just convey the seriousness. I have celiac disease. I can't eat gluten. And so my food can't even come in contact with gluten. Can you help me order something that is safe for me? Or do you know if the bunless burger is safe, like how it's prepared? And then I ask questions, like I have to be the knowledgeable one. I can't expect my waiter to know everything. So I have to say, do you know if the burgers are cooked in a separate griddle, or are they toasting the buns on the same griddle? Do you know how the French fries are prepared? Are they in a dedicated fryer? Just have those conversations and just ask, is there any way you can ask them to prepare my meal with allergy-friendly measures, allergy prep, they call it, where they change gloves, use clean pans. Is there any way that they can do that for my meal? So that's a really great way to just convey your needs in a very sweet and kind, forthright way. All right, another question. Do I need to be worried about kissing someone who has just eaten gluten? Yes, you do. They just shoved a bunch of beer and pizza in their mouth and they want to kiss you? No thanks. And I remember my husband used to eat gluten before he decided to go gluten-free. And one of the reasons he went gluten-free, there were many reasons, but one of the reasons is like, I don't like that I can't just kiss you. You're my wife. And so absolutely, they need to brush their teeth and disinfect somehow before they kiss you, because gluten can be on their lips and their tongue and teeth and all of those fun things that happen with kissing, right? So yes, you do need to worry about cross-contamination from kissing. And maybe it would motivate your significant other to not eat gluten on your dates. So this way, he or she can still kiss you. All right, can you wash gluten-free and non-gluten-free dishes in the same dishwasher? Yes, absolutely. Those dishwashers today, they like kill all these germs and really do a great job in hot water. And I don't know, you are definitely in good hands with the dishwasher. That's actually a preferable way. I do think there's some cases like still that mesh wire colander where gluten bits still get stuck in there no matter how much you clean them. But for, the purposes of your forks, your everyday plates and things like that, it's going to be totally fine to use the same dishwasher and even to use the same dishes, okay? All right, how much do we need to worry about refrigerator handles, microwave oven handles? It's a good question. It is a low risk of cross-contamination. Excuse me. If you are not feeling well though, and you are still struggling with your diet, this could be it. This could be the source. Wash those refrigerator handles before you're using them. Or if you know you're the gluten-free person, so just make sure you wash your hands after handling those handles and stuff. But I think if people in your home can be good stewards and have good kitchen hygiene, you're probably not going to get gluten from the refrigerator handle. So I'm maybe giving you some tips that are a little over and above, but these are just things to keep in mind. These are potential sources of gluten. All right, so my last question here I'm going to answer, and then we're out of time. And that is, how careful do we need to be at the dentist office? So it's another great question. The dentist is always a fun discussion. I have a really fun story about the dentist office, and I include this little story in my book. But my dentist wanted to take a mold of my mouth, and they kind of mix this like clay looking thing together, and then they put it in your mouth and it feels like Play-Doh in your mouth kind of. And so she's mixing this up and I'm like, what is in that? She's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, I need to know if that has gluten. I can't eat gluten. And so she says, well, let me go check. So she went and my dentist did a bunch of research. And about 10 minutes later, she comes back and she says, I have good news. It's just chemicals. So if you were here, you'd probably be laughing because I laughed so hard when she said, good news, it's just chemicals. But you do need to be careful in the dentist office and toothpaste and things in your mouth. I will say most of the stuff that has starch in it is cornstarch. But yeah, ask. Make your dentist aware that you can eat gluten and make sure that they're using gluten-free stuff for you. And again, the more we advocate, the more change will happen and the more gluten will be an everyday kind of thing for everyone. All right, so thank you so much for coming. Thank you to the Nourished Festival friends for putting this on. You guys are doing a great job, and I hope you guys support all the wonderful brands here. This is really a great festival for us, and we want to keep it going despite COVID putting a damper on some of our fun plans. So please support this festival. Please support these brands. And thank you so much for coming today. And I really hope that we can continue to be friends and connect. And so, please do find me online and on Instagram, and we can chat there and continue the conversation. Thank you so much.